having been an absolute waste man as a child, as a teenager, for travelling into like a professional grown up with a decent job and a stable home and trying to be the dad that I think I should be, that's been a really important part for me. And I would say that it does, it's cliche to say it defines who I am as a person, and that was what we wanted. Don't get me wrong, after 2 I tried to renege on the deal, and that didn't go down very well, but I'm blessed to have 3 healthy children, mate.
You can only really do the best with the knowledge you've got and the background you've come from, so I think
couldn't happen because the world was just melting down around us. The hospital staff were in chaos, not knowing what they were going to do. And then on the Monday, when we're still in the neonatal unit, full lockdown, nobody's allowed out of their house, and just what are we going to do? How do we go through this neonatal period with Theo?
And we're rolling. Welcome to the Parenting Truths podcast. Today I'm joined by dad of 3, Russ Buckner. Thanks for joining me, Russ.
Yeah, cheers for having me, Tom. It's a pleasure to get to speak to you, man.
Thank you, mate. So I think first, I just mentioned we first connected way back in 2020, right at the start of the Dad Vibes. So like you said, you're one of the OGs, and I think we connected over a shared love of drum and bass music. So I'm not sure some of the American listeners, I don't know if drum and bass has ever been huge in America, but it's definitely a UK thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's growing, definitely growing in recognition, but I think if you were to say kind of UK, New Zealand and Canada, that's its kind of primary home at the moment. But yeah, definitely it's a UK sound. Right. Big up to all the drum and bass fans out there.
So there's so much we could cover today. The biggest one I really want to tap into is how on earth you parent 3 kids under 3, which I know you had at one point. I know they're a little bit older now. So yeah, I think the main reason I wanted to chat to you, because I get a strong sense that becoming a dad for you personally has shaped and changed you a lot. I think you've had quite a big transition personally. And usually I ask guests to take me back to the start of their parenting journey, but with you I wanted to dive right back maybe to your childhood and just try and get sort of an understanding of what that looked like for you, what your family dynamic was growing up, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally, man. I appreciate the space to talk, and just before I get into that, right, I just want to call out, parenting's hard, and I have nothing but respect for my family, the people that raised me. So anything that I say that's like about my difficulties or whatever, that's meant from a place of love and respect for the fact that I now understand how hard parenting is, and I get it. But my personal experience, right? I come from a family where my maternal side and my paternal side are both Air Force families. If I think about my parents' childhoods, they were sort of mobile, moving, difficult, faced challenges of their own, and so on. So then I was born 87, and my parents separated when I was 3.5, and we'd moved to the States. My dad's American, so we'd moved to the States, and my mum had given up her life to move over there and chase their dreams together as a couple, and that all kind of crashed down for mum, and we moved back to the UK, me and my mum. Difficult relationship with my dad, not seeing him or speaking to him. Credit to him, we tried, but it's 5,000 miles away. So I spent my school life kind of struggling with that a little bit. Primary school, my stepdad, big shouts to my stepdad Bruce, absolute legend. We never really got on when I was a kid. I was difficult. I was a difficult child. I was challenged. I was bright but naughty. Smart but challenging, and that would have been hard for my parents. So to get to your question, right? I went through school, had some animosity about family life, broken life, not sure where I wanted to be, not getting the experience I wanted, not being able to make the life I wanted. When I was fortunate enough to meet my wife Trish, a big thing for me and for her, her own experiences, was that we wanted to be really proud of the parents we were, and we wanted to commit to parenting and the kids above all else. And that's not to say that that's not what my parents did, but we just sort of had that value really closely. So for me, having been an absolute waste man as a child, as a teenager, for travelling into like a professional grown up with a decent job and a stable home and trying to be the dad that I think I should be, that's been a really important part for me. And I would say that it does, it's cliche to say it defines who I am as a person, but being a dad of 3 and trying to be the best husband I can to my darling wife Trish, for me that is sort of like the core thing that I want from life, and I'm really blessed to even have that opportunity, man. My life could have gone so many different directions, and to be here where I am, even though it's not perfect, I am eternally thankful for it.
And you described yourself there, and you also mentioned it when I reached out to you, yourself as a waste man in your teens. in terms of contributing to that, was it... did you like long for that relationship with your dad, or did you long for that close-knit family life that maybe you saw your friends having? What was it that contributed to that, or was it just a mixture of everything?
I think if I reflect on it now as an adult, I don't think I had awareness to be able to articulate it at the time. So I don't think it was like a conscious response to a feeling. I think it was just troubled. I was a bit of an outsider at school. I was a bit of a rebel. I was a bit naughty. I was kind of, and then I had these two lives, right? Because I'd live with my mum and I'd go to school. I lived in like a sort of, grotty Middle England town. Go to school, it's a grotty school, and then I'd go to the States where my dad lived, and he had, 2 kids, and in my eyes, he lived this like glamorous life, and they had everything they wanted. America's the land of abundance, right? And I guess I was kind of stuck between wanting that life but not having that life, but then also wanting the life that my brother and sister had, where they had like a loving family unit and so on. And just to underline, I'm not discrediting my mum at all. My mum is an absolute soldier, but I guess reflecting back, as an adult, done some counselling. I would advise any dad to take some counselling to reflect on their childhood experiences, but you kind of piece together those impacts that they will have had, even though you're not consciously aware of what they are. I was just conflicted, troubled, and just put myself out with a bit of a chip on the shoulder. And and it's probably worth mentioning right off the bat, right? My dad passed when I was 14, and nobody handles that well. But me being a kind of kid that had self-destructive tendencies anyway, I just absolutely went off the rails, right? I had this mantra where there's no point in planning for tomorrow, because tomorrow's going to get taken away from you. So just go full send, full blast now. And as a 15-year-old kid, that's only ever going to be destructive. And it took me till I was probably about 26, 27 to kind of change that thought pattern to say, you can shape your life. There are things that are worth kind of hoping for, and you make a play now and hope it comes back in the future. And until I kind of started to live that way a little bit, and credit to Trish for helping me be that way, I didn't ever really make any kind of sensible decisions. My instinct was always self-destructive behaviour, screw everybody else, just do what you want to do. And I look back at those years kind of with a bit of, not regret, because I learned from it, but disdain probably. Like so many things I did, so many people I took advantage of, or situations I didn't make the best of, and that's difficult. So that adds to the thing about being like, okay, I'm so blessed to be where I am, and I don't want to compromise that, and trying to balance like my own individual goals with what my family goals and all that kind of thing. It just kind of makes those thought processes a bit more solid.
And you talked about being an outsider. Did you find some escape through music, and did you find a community there of friends? Because I'm just thinking back, so I grew up in the Forest of Dean, so when I was 13, 14, there was a huge community of like people that loved like techno music and drum and bass, and they enjoyed free parties, which is just like they'll set up a rig in on someone's land or in the woods and just keep partying until they're told to leave. So I never really entered that world, although I really enjoyed drum and bass music. But within that world, you had lots of troubled people. Quite a few people have come out of it now. Unfortunately to say, a few people that I was friends with lost their lives through too much drugs or things like that. But would you say you found escape in a community like that?
Yeah, I would say that music creates those communities, right? Because it's quite partisan. If you think maybe your experience was the same as me, when you go back to school, you're kind of defined by either what sport you like or what music you like. Your clothes, your sense of style, everything's dictated by what scene you're into. And I kind of bounced around that, flipping and flopping and not really being cool and not really fitting in. And I really got into like sort of, I would say I was stuck between like the hip hop world and the kind of more rocky, like let's say like new metal, would you call it, right? Limp Bizkit and Slipknot and all that sort of stuff. And I found like my people at that time in that scene, and that then naturally led on to like, well, we're old enough to go out and party now. What do we want to do? And someone introduced me to that kind of drum and bass sound, and I fell in love. And I was never like deep in the free party thing. I'm definitely too. I'm not quite that much of a waste man that I was out at 17 and like causing that much trouble. But I definitely got into the kind of. I'll be transparent about it, right? I was in the drug scene, and there were things that we were doing in our local town that I don't regret. There were experiences, but there's definitely a fork in the road where, had I not have been able to step away from that scene, that sort of that behaviour, the future that I have now, the present that I have now, would absolutely not have happened. Similar experiences to what you're talking about as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying you wouldn't have become the person you are today without journeying through that.
Yeah.
I think because I was born in 87 as well, so it seems like we transitioned through school at exactly the same time. And when I talk to people about my journey through school, some people find it hard to believe. So I never tried a drop of alcohol until I was 18. I sort of sailed through school. I played football. I was super into coding and technology. So I remember I was one of the first people to start writing code for websites. So I'd be doing my GCSEs, and I'd finish my exams, and then I'd go to the staff room and be coding the school website that they were paying me for.
That's cool. That's really cool.
But obviously, I was...
Sorry, I'm laughing, mate. I don't mean to cut you off, but my experience was totally different, right?
Yeah.
My RE exam, man, we went and did a bong down the field before we did our exam. Like, but it's just how different, right?
Yeah, but I was in... So like I said, I went to school in the Forest of Dean, so I was surrounded by all of that. And I'd feel peer pressure every day, but I don't know what it was. Like, I was just okay with not doing that. And I seemed to get what I needed through... I played a lot of football up to, like, district level. I just wanted to... I grew up in a hamlet, so I wanted to go home and just write code. But I was aware at the time that maybe I was missing out on certain things, not doing bongs or going to free parties, but even socialising a little bit more than just through football. So, yeah, it seems like we've got quite polarising journeys through school, but it is nice to hear that you don't regret certain things, and it has shaped the person you are today.
Yeah, I think it's important to look back on those things and try and learn from every experience you have in life. Excuse me, because otherwise there's no, you've got to try and get value from everything you've done, and if it helps me have a little bit of insight into the struggles that my kids might face in a few years or something similar to that, then all good, and gives me a bit of perspective on how different people's lives are. Everybody's life's completely different. You've just got to have that awareness of what's the other person facing, why are they struggling, and look for the deeper meaning in things. And I think, having been through that journey myself, it kind of helps me to be able to try and shape my relationships that way with other people.
And how old were you when you met your now wife?
25. Yeah, we've been together 11 years now. Yeah. So, and the story to that, sorry man, the story to that's kind of mental as well, right? Because I was a chef when I met Trish, and I was working and travelling, and big shouts to your guest on episode 1, Steve. I really wanted to be in the motorsport world. My dad worked in motorsport, and I wanted to do that, but I was just not doing things in the right way. So I was working in restaurants on racetracks, and ended up working, going through jobs because I was a bit of a loser and getting sacked and whatever. And then on my 25th birthday, I got sacked from this job, and it turns out that because I was living where I worked, that also meant I was homeless. So I rang my mum, and I was like, "Mum, it's 11 o'clock at night. You live 3 hours away. I'm really sorry, but I need you to come pick me up and help me move out of this house because I just got sacked from my job and now I'm homeless." And anyway, the reason I'm telling you that is because I went and got a job in a local place near where my mum lived, and that's where I met Trish, my wife. So had it not have been for that kind of like negative experience, I wouldn't have had the life I have now at all.
Did you and Trish cross paths through your childhood, if that's where she was based?
Weirdly, yeah, because what's funny about it is my parents had moved 3 hours away from where I grew up, but my parents had moved to where my stepdad grew up. And what's funny about it is my stepdad's parents, my grandparents, they lived next door to Trish's auntie. So when Trish and I met, we didn't know that we'd ever met, but I think about 6 or 9 months in, we realised, We definitely played together in the fields as kids when in the summer holidays or something like that, and it was kind of weird. Like, we had an engagement party, and my grandparents knew all of her family, and we were like, "How is this possible?" It's just weird the way the world is like that, almost.
Yeah. When were you both on similar pages in terms of? Did you always know you wanted to have a big family? Were you both on the same page with that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm one of three. Obviously, my sister and brother are half brothers and sisters, but because they're the only brothers and sisters I've got, I'm the oldest. I've never felt that kind of half sibling thing. And my wife as well. She's one of five, but similar to me, she's the only one who's not. The rest are all half siblings, but she's the youngest. So for her, of course, they were always her siblings. So we have similar experiences like that. And when we got together and we were talking about what our goals were as individuals, or if we were to get together and raise a family, we both said we'd like to have 3 kids. We both said we'd like to have them close together for logistical reasons and other reasons, and that was what we wanted. Don't get me wrong, after 2 I tried to renege on the deal, and that didn't go down very well, but I'm blessed to have 3 healthy children, mate. We've spoken before, and I'm fully aware of how much of a blessing that is, in spite of all the difficulties it comes with. So I wouldn't think badly on my own situation ever for that.
No, because I was quite surprised when you did one of your baby announcements. I can't remember if it was number 2 or 3. It was very it was a conscious announcement where you sort of acknowledged that you were very lucky, and maybe people don't find it as straightforward to have babies.
Where my thought process on that comes from is, we all have close-knit friends, and I suppose when you're at a similar age, you're all trying to go through that kind of thing in a similar time frame. And so with our own experiences, also with friends' experiences, also just awareness, and you're supporting causes. Our first was Prem, and so we got quite into that world, and it made me acutely aware of how fragile pregnancy is and how fragile family is. And I didn't want to be disrespectful, like you're talking with Steve about people saying, when are you having another, while people were saying to us, oh, you're having another already. The thing is, like, being aware of that, like, we're announcing our 2nd or our 3rd, and our friends are struggling, or our parents have got concerns about things that they've experienced. You should be mindful. I think everybody's struggling, right? It was difficult for us to have our first, so it was a blessing. So then having a second, we were very blessed.
Yeah, because I think when you're of a certain age and you're trying to have a baby, like you say, the chances are your friends are going to be doing the same, and there's always going to be maybe someone's been trying for 18 months and they haven't even got pregnant yet. Maybe you've got someone that's experienced a few miscarriages, someone's trying IVF, or someone that has just been told that, unfortunately, that they're not going to be able to have kids. And it is...
That's exactly it.
Yeah, I guess, and then when you do have no matter what you've gone through, when you do have a healthy baby, if you're in that world, you sort of feel a level of guilt talking about it in a positive way, which you shouldn't at all, but when you're consciously aware of what's going on around you, it's hard not to, when you know that this person or that person is still struggling. So
I think I wouldn't describe what I feel in that scenario as guilt, but it's more of that kind of awareness and empathy, it's hard, like Father's Day, things like that, Mother's Day, like, you see nowadays posts that are like, to all the mums that aren't mums, all those kind of people are calling it out now, and they're aware of other people's scenarios, and it's important, because for a while it was just all rose-tinted glasses, and I'm glad to see people try and be more aware of other people's struggles being different to their own.
So with your transition to 3 under 3, I just wanted to dive into that, because I get weirdly, since having Mia, so there's 4.5 years between Luca and Mia, and I've had a lot of parents reach out to me who have been trying because they want 2 under 2, or they want that 2-year age gap, and they've asked me, what it's like having that 4.5-year age gap. And I guess one of the positives I can communicate to them is, with Luca, we had 4.5 years with him. I was able to just immerse myself in being his dad, and helping him through the 2s and the 3s and just trying to absorb every last moment. So I always think to myself, when he was 3 years old, what it would be like if there was another little one running around, or in your case, another little one running around and a baby. So are you able to just share what that's like having 3 under 3?
I think you're right to call out that benefit that there is to the bigger age gap, and we consciously sacrifice that benefit. If I take Autumn's experience, right, she was 16 months when we had Theo, my second. So really, she's only ever known that scenario of having a little brother around. She's only ever known being the biggest, and it is difficult. It was difficult, but in some ways it's easier as well because she's only ever known that. She doesn't have that thing around, you don't spend as much time with me anymore as you used to, you don't love me as much as you used to, so on and so forth. So it was hard. Your conversation you had with Steve where you said parents of 3 say going from 1 to 2 is harder than going from 2 to 3 is very true. I would say that in my experience, you have no option but to compromise the quality that you give to the second child and then further to the third child.
Right.
It's just an unfortunate truth, right? You can't, the space for love in your heart can grow, but your ability to use your hands and carve your time up can't grow. It's finite. So you have to prioritize, and that's maybe not a positive thing, but in terms of they all support each other so well, they go through phases so well, they're close together, so they're like learning off each other. There are a number of benefits to that. And then selfishly, right, as a dad, we went from nappies to nappies to nappies. We've only ever really had one in nappies each time, because we've sort of said, right, let's try and get them dry. And we'll be out of nappies in, I don't know, what, 6 to 9 months or something, and then we'll be done. We'll never have to go back to it. Like, in my head, thinking about going back to nappies after having 5 years off, it just scares me. Like, so we're kind of going through the phases, and they're prolonged. Like, every phase lasts 5 years and it goes down the waterfall. But then when it's done, and we can move on as a family. So logistically, there is that benefit.
I was quite shocked at how much you forget. I thought, we've done the baby thing, we'll be absolutely fine. But 4.5 years is a long time. So to go back into the sleepless nights, like, for example, last night, Mia was up every hour and a half, and then she was up at 5. We managed to get a couple of hours, but you just quickly forget the nappies, the feeding, the burping. But there's definitely a benefit there, just to keep rolling organically from one to the other.
Struggle through it for longer, but then it's done. Even with that short age gap as well, like, you do have that that forget of certain things, right? So Alfie's, my youngest Alfie, just turned 1. He's just got to that phase where if he wakes up in the night, you kind of have to lay on the floor with him to settle him, and we'd forgotten what that was like, and now going back to I'm up for a couple of hours at 3 o'clock in the morning. It is a struggle, but it's not as raw as it would be if I hadn't done it for 4 years. I think I'm getting old as well, right? If I was 42 and still doing that, I don't know if I'd be able to cope with it. Like, I don't know.
And I think the biggest thing in terms of babies, I've realised, and I've sort of revisited some of my content that I share on the Dad Vibes as well, is that every baby is different. So there isn't really a one approach all when it comes to sleep and things like that, because every baby is different and needs a different approach. Like, for example, Luca was 18 months before he ever slept consistently through the night, but we've had a couple of weeks where Mia's been able to, with a feed here and there, stitch her cycles together herself. So there's definitely not a one solution fits all. I don't know if you've noticed with your little ones that they all need a different
totally
approach.
Different.
Yeah,
absolutely, all totally different. Autumn was difficult for Trish because Autumn was prem and very small, and so establishing breastfeeding and then being able to feed enough and consistently enough, that was really hard for Trish. But then when that passed, after, let's say, the first sort of 2.5, 3 months, when things got into a rhythm, Autumn would just sleep through the night, and that was a blessing. And then Theo was just the child that everybody always talks about that never sleeps and so on. And we ended up learning that was because he was allergic to cow's milk protein. So by the time he got to like 8 months and we started weaning him onto food, it turned out that he'd been sick for the last 8 months, and that's why he wasn't sleeping. You know, his stomach was in knots and so on.
Oh,
So
okay.
we kind of put ourselves through that pain unnecessarily. But then Alfie, again, he's different. He naps in totally different schedules to what the other two did. So it's just what we expected our routine to be doesn't work, and we have to kind of figure out a new life, you know.
Yeah. So was it with so you've got 3 little ones. Was it with Theo that was born? I assume he was born during lockdown or during COVID in some capacity.
Yeah, right on lockdown, right? So the dates, we first went into lockdown in the UK on Monday the 23rd of March.
Yeah.
Theo was born on the Friday previous, the 20th of March, which was my birthday as well. We share a birthday. So and he was prem as well, and there's all sorts of, you know what that's like. So we're in the hospital in a high stress situation, plus the world is in chaos, like absolute chaos on the outside of the door. And I'll use this analogy, maybe you'll relate to it. When you go into the hospital, the sort of walls of the universe close down to the labour room, right? And you have no awareness of the world outside. However, that time, that couldn't happen because the world was just melting down around us. The hospital staff were in chaos, not knowing what they were going to do. And then on the Monday, when we're still in the neonatal unit, you know, full lockdown, nobody's allowed out of the house, and just what are we going to do? How do we go through this neonatal period with Theo? And you know, it was a real acute time there because luckily Theo was healthy and Trish was healthy this time. She wasn't healthy at the first birth, so things were fine. But we were in that prem scenario. Trish was trying to establish breastfeeding, so she just lived in, and I tried to live in as much as I could. But they came to me on like the Wednesday, and they handed me a letter, and they were like, only one parent allowed in ever, so choose. Which obviously the choice is, well, you're trying to breastfeed, so I'll see you later. But walking away from the neonatal unit, thinking I won't see him again until whatever this madness is comes to the end, or he comes home. Which, blessing, was only like 9 days, so okay. But that 9 days was brutal. On a bit of a tangent as well, my granddad died from COVID the next day, and I'm my granddad's next of kin for a long list of reasons. So
Yeah.
we were going through this like full circle of life headache that was mental and really acute, and the world was collapsing. But then that passed, and it was like I'd had 6 weeks off, I think, because my work were really cool. They were like, you know, take your paternity leave, take some time to deal with what's going on with your granddad, and when you're ready, call us and we'll come back to work. So I ring up work, and I'm like, what do I do? They're like, oh yeah, you know, we just all work from home now. I'm like, okay, well, have I got equipment? Oh, well, no, everyone's cleared out the office. They've come and got everything and brought it home. So I was kind of like lagging behind in work. Like everyone had settled into what working from home looked like, and I was still like scrambling around trying to figure out what to do. Paired with the fact that we were all stuck at home and couldn't leave the house and couldn't get food, and it was just really like chaotic time. As a dad, as a human, and as a, you know, whatever else, it was just really mental. But yeah, sorry, I'm waffling on, but we got there. It was just really acute.
Yeah. And what about the period when Theo came home? Did you get a lot? Because I don't think midwives or health visitors were doing home visits at that point, were they? Because I've heard
Nothing.
stories of babies getting impacted a little bit, losing a lot of weight. How were you able to monitor? Because that's such a fragile period, isn't it, those first couple of months?
I think the reality for us is because autumn had been slightly more, what's the right phrase? You know, she'd been underweight and she'd been more
Right.
acutely monitored. We had that awareness and that learning that we were able to kind of trust ourselves to be analytical about what Theo was going through, and fortunately he was fine, so we didn't necessarily miss not having that professional opinion at the time. And weirdly, my mum was stuck in our house as well, because obviously we'd rung mum to say, mum, come down, we need to go into the labour ward. And she lives 2.5 hours away from where we live, so she'd come down on like Thursday, and then we're stuck in the house. So we're having this whole family crisis of like,
Oh, so
can
you
she
had,
go
like,
home,
formed a
or is she
bubble.
stuck? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
before bubbles were a thing, it was just like, you know, she was in our house when lockdown happened. So can she leave? You know, eventually she did, but still, at the time it was. So we were blessed to have that help, really, because I think we would have really struggled without that in those first couple of days.
Yeah. And at that point, I guess you didn't have any kids in school, so
No.
I guess, yeah, because I found when we went into lockdown with Luca, he turned 2, and he hadn't been to preschool at that point. So, and I think there was a heat wave, wasn't there, straight away?
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of time outside. But yeah, I guess trying to work out this working from home thing as well, which was a huge transition. Now it's the norm, and you think, why would you even waste half an hour a day travelling into work? It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm so, like, the way that the world has changed because of COVID has led to a lot of positives for us as a family. Yeah. You work in a similar kind of field to me, and so my ability to be part of the family and still work full time is on a level that we wouldn't have been able to achieve before. I was commuting an hour and a half to Manchester every day, 4 days a week previous to that. So it's totally changed that, and I'm forever thankful. And I will not go back now. Like, I've moved jobs since then to go away from a company that said, right, come back everybody. I've moved away from that company to work for a company that said, no, actually we believe in this way of working. We're going to keep it up. So more companies should choose to let their staff work in a way that's right for them. That could be on site, that could be off site, that could be both.
I think that's causing a lot of people to leave jobs, even if they're being pulled into the office 3 days a week. You can literally now just go on LinkedIn or go on a jobs board and just look for the remote jobs. And I know a few people in Wales, maybe where house prices are a lot cheaper, are taking London jobs with the London salary, and you need to go into London once a month, which is nothing these days on the train. And they get to live in Wales, where house prices are decent with a London salary. So it's definitely opened a lot of doors, and you're able to cast the net a lot wider, I think, certainly with careers. So in terms of work-life balance then, how do you find juggling 3 kids and working from home? Because I assume you work from home full-time now?
Yeah. It comes down to self-management, I think. The company that I work for believe in sort of working around your personal commitments, which is great. So if I need to take 2 hours off in the day because Trisha's got an appointment or the kids need looking after, I can do that, and I can make up the time some of the time. So that's really good. When I first started doing it, I found it really hard because all of a sudden I can't leave work at work. Work is now my house, and it took a while to transition into that. But I find after 3 years I've settled into it now, and I'm trying to keep my work life not that demanding. So rather than putting my hand up for a stretch target or more, I've got spare capacity, I'll kind of be a bit more reserved about that. Might backfire one day, but while I can ride that wave, I'll ride that wave. I'm fortunate to be at a level that takes care of our family pretty well and isn't overly demanding, so I'm not really got much of a mindset to change that. What do you want to do in your, you go to your appraisal, what do you want to do next year? The same. That sounds pretty good to me, thanks. So I'm kind of there in that place at the moment to try and keep that work-life balance in the right place. And also then it gives me the ability to like pick up side projects. You've got the Dad Vibes as your creative outlet, and I've got my drum and bass thing and the record label as my creative outlet. So it gives me the ability to kind of juggle all those time commitments.
Yeah, I think I was talking to my wife recently, and we were saying, because we had an hour commute into Cardiff and an hour back, and that was every day. And my mother-in-law used to come over at, I think, 7:30 in the morning, and we never used to get back from work till like 6:30. And to do that, I think we did it 4 days a week. It's just insane now to think of all that time spent driving, all of the money we used to spend, £200 a month just to park the car in Cardiff, let alone the £400 a month on petrol. So obviously COVID has been awful across the world, but there's been so many personal benefits that people can take from it. And although working from home is tough when you've got kids at home, there's so many more benefits. You get to explore these side projects, like you say. And of your side projects, have you been able to focus or elevate them a lot more in recent times? Or because I know you've got a record label, haven't you?
I wouldn't have even been able to do it at all. Because like you, what did I commute 4 days a week? It was sort of hour and a half each way. That's killed it. Any time I've got for free time or side projects or personal interest is gone. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts in the car, but that's not. So it's given me the time to be able to recycle that. Life is basically just a game of poker, right? You get dealt hands of cards, and you'll get a new set of cards in a few minutes. But the cards you've got now, find the best way to play them, and play them. Sometimes you get a bad hand, sometimes you get a good hand. So just see what situation you're in right now and play it as best you can. So you just got to be dynamic, and I think the changes that the world's gone through over the last 3 years, there's been plenty of opportunity to try things out and see what's going, and try and make some space for where you're at and what you want to do.
And in terms of the way you want to parent, because obviously you follow the dad vibes, my content is a little bit more focused on sort of responsive type parenting. Are you conscious about the way you want to parent, or like how do you approach that, and how do you and your partner, are you on the same page with that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think it's what's healthy about mine and Trish's relationship is that we don't always agree, but we're always able to discuss.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we both had different childhoods that you wouldn't describe as this kind of, gentle parenting. We both want to respect the humanity of our kids and treat them as people. And your content, one of the reasons why I gripped onto your content initially was about being like self-accountable. You know, sit back and reflect on what you've done. And what your goals are for how you want to be a parent, and just try and kind of build on that, right? You're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to do things that you reflect back and think I could have done better. But if you're always trying to reflect and evaluate and maybe do something better next time, then overall your performance will grow. And that's my approach to trying to get to the point I want to be at. You know, in the house we say we've raised a shouty household, which we didn't want to do, but that was inevitable because we're both fiery people. So as much as we've tried, our natural tendency is going to roll into the kids. So we've not nailed it. It's not perfect, but I think we should be proud. That's a bit of a egotistical thing to say, but I think Trish and I should be proud of what we're trying to do and how we've got on with doing it. You know, reflecting on how you reflect back your own personal experiences, the way you were parented, and you just subconsciously put that into your kids. But trying to catch those moments and say, why do I know that this isn't the right thing to do, and what should I be doing? And just trying to be like internal before you're external. That's sort of my biggest thing, is like, what am I going to do here? Is that what I want to do here? Okay, what am I going to do here? I don't catch it every time, but most of the time I'm able to put out what I'd like to put out.
Yeah. And I think we're quite fortunate in today's world. We've got access to so many resources, and we can become so conscious about a lot of things because, you know, my dad, for example, is from an Italian background, and their way of parenting is a lot firmer. But it's not about condemning them or going after them, because you can only really do the best with the knowledge you've got and the background you've come from. So I think a lot of people these days are trying to, like you say, self-reflect and self-improve because we've got access to great people on YouTube, Instagram, amazing books and things like that. So yeah, we can be a lot more self-reflective, and I think make progress a lot quicker, not just in parenting, in any avenue of life.
I fully agree with that, Tom. You know, we live in the age of information. So, like I said, you've got to play the best you can with the cards you've got. You know, and credit to Trish as well, right? Trish's psychologist. She's done a lot of work with children. If there was anyone in this world that was placed to be able to kind of take book learning and turn it into our family life, she's all over that. And so, you know, I do my best to study from what she's studying or take on board what she's talking about. I pair that with kind of information like the stuff that comes from you and other people in your space. So it's like you said, we're not throwing shade at the experiences my parents gave me or they got from their parents. It's just there's a lot more information out there now. It's a lot easier to think about, how do I want to do this? Yeah. Also, we live in a more comfortable world, right? You know, the world was harder on my grandparents, let's say, to raise their kids. They didn't have as much means, and so we've got to leverage the fact that we've got a bit more of a comfortable life to try and do that. Someone said you can't change the world unless you change the playground, and that really struck me. I thought it's absolutely true. So it's on us to do that. We have to take the ownership to do that.
Yeah, and even the whole working from home setup, you know, it allows us to maybe have that mental space, like, because I've found I've been much less stressed since working from home. You know, because I can work from home. I've got a lot more time. I can be a lot more relaxed. So when, you know, Luca, for example, is really testing my patience, I've got that. Although, you know, I don't do it every time, because I'm much less stressed. You know, I can be much more calmer and responsive. Whereas, if we look at my dad, for example, who was grafting in a industrial unit for 20 years whilst I was growing up at 5, home at 7. You know, he's not going to have the space to to be a lot calmer.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a blessing, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, definitely. So what I've been doing with every guest is I've been closing out with 3 questions. You might have seen them on episode 1, but quick fire, so don't overthink them too much. But question 1 is, knowing what you know now, what parenting advice would you give yourself before you became a parent?
I use this phrase quite a lot with people that are getting into it, but my answer to this is always, what works is what's right. People are too worried about what the right thing to do is. And if it works for mum, for baby, for dad, or whatever your arrangement is, it's the right answer. Just trust yourself. Don't second guess what you're doing. You have to get through it. If you're reflecting and you're repairing, if things go wrong, whatever you need to happen is the right answer. Don't go looking for the right answer.
Love that. Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for that, mate.
Cheers, mate.
What's the one thing you feel you need to work on personally as a parent?
Volume. Yeah. It's got to be that kind of keeping the level, because now that my kids are 4 and 3, my eldest 2, I see them reflect back, and Theo particularly at 3, he's now able to say, "Guys, stop shouting at each other," and that cuts deep, man.
Yeah.
Like really deep. He doesn't like it, and I respect that, and I don't like it either. So volume is the one thing that I need to be more reticent of.
Yeah, it's always interesting for the first time your child says, "Can you two stop shouting?" It
Caught
does,
me off guard.
Yeah,
Really
hits
off
home,
guard,
doesn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And then finally, what's the best thing about being a parent, if you can hone in on just one?
It's cliche, isn't it? But when they show you love back, because like your love for them is unconditional, they don't know that yet. So when they like choose to show you love back, it just melts everything away. Like anything that you're worried about in life, it just disappears. You know, whether that's just a cuddle or even Alfie at like 9 months old leaning his head in, being like, "Give me a kiss." These things, that's the moment. That is it for me. Is feeling that back. It just melts everything away.
Yeah. Because Mia's 18 weeks now, and she started doing a lot more of that. You know, she catches your eye, she looks for you around the room, and that just changes everything.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good one. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today, Russ, and also thanks for being so open and honest. I've been quite shocked at how willing everyone is to be so open and honest, but like I said, this is a safe space just for parents to share, so thank you for letting us into your life a little bit, and hopefully providing parents and listeners some motivation and validation along their parenting journey.
I appreciate those words, Tom, massively, and I think it's a reflection of yourself, mate, that people are willing to be honest and transparent, because I think you've created a community online where you're putting that out, and as is always the case, you get back what you put out. So I'm glad to see that people are engaged with that attitude, and once again, mate, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to what ramblings I've got to say today.
And then I'm more than happy to check in a couple of years' time as well, mate, and see how you're navigating those school years.
That'd be cool. We just found out today where Autumn's going to school. So yeah, that'd be a pleasure. Anytime you want to talk, I'm happy to talk.
Was it your first choice school?
It was, yeah. Which we made the choice based on her personality. So hopefully it's the right choice for her. We'll see how in a couple of years.
Yeah, we actually moved house just to get Luca into the school we felt that was right for him. So the local schools didn't really feel right. So last August it was quite a struggle, because you need to be within the right catchment at the right time, and it all came together like within the final week. So yeah, it's a lovely small little country school that he seems to be thriving in, so yeah.
Well, we did exactly the same, Tom, and then after we'd lived here, we chose a different school to the one we moved here for.
Amazing.
It's going to be dynamic, right? Anyway, but yeah, we'll check in on part 2 of this conversation in a couple of years, and I'll let you know if it's the right choice.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you for your time, Russ, and we'll touch base soon.
Thank you, Tom. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye.